The Hungarian president Katalin Novak has condemned the never-ending violence against Christians in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria. Reacting to the latest incident in Plateau State, she said, "Brutal attack on Christians at Christmas in Nigeria. According to certain news outlets, more than 100 people were killed. My thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims. This massacre must end. Persecuted Christians must receive help." It is a heartbreaking situation, and the worst part is that people are trying to downplay this incident. Al Jazeera said in an article covering the unfortunate incident that it was as a result of climate change. What an irresponsible take. Let's even assume that this is still a clash between cattle herders and farmers. When has it become a crime for farmers to refuse herders grazing their cattle in their farms? It costs a lot of money to run a farm, and they make all that investment only for cattle herders to come and graze their cattle in their farms, and within a few minutes all their investment is gone. So it is criminal for cattle herders to graze their cattle in people's farms. It is inexcusable whether it is climate change or desertification that caused reduction in green areas where cattle can graze. That doesn't give any cattle herder the reason to graze cattle in people's farms. By the way, it is no longer a clash between farmers and cattle herders, because looking at the latest incident, no farm was involved, no cattle was involved. In fact, they attacked unarmed women and children in a church and in their homes. And they went on to burn down everything in about 20 communities. So it definitely has a religious undertone. That's why many people are actively trying to cover up this very fact. Their defense is that these kind of attacks happen in states like Zamfara, Sokoto, Niger, and other areas. So they try to convince people that it is widespread, that they attack Muslims too. So it should not be called a religious persecution. Without going into too much details to debunk this false narrative, one thing is very clear in the difference in attacks. In Christian communities, they always burn down everything in sight after committing the atrocities. The extremists committing these deplorable acts are not indigenous to these areas. They always invade, unlike in the states already mentioned. They do not burn down anything in these states. They just strike and maybe kidnap some people. So you can understand that it is quite different. It is not the case they are trying to make it to be. And it seems Christmas Eve has become their preferred period to attack these helpless communities. Let's even assume that it is a clash between cattle herders and farmers, like they want people to believe. What has a church, pastors, and churchgoers got to do with it? People might want to check the numbers that have fallen victim in the north. Again, the insurgents committing these terrible acts are not indigenous to the communities or surrounding areas. So it is not a community clash like they want people to believe. It is an invasion of mostly Christian communities in Nigeria's Middle Belt region with the intention to erase everything about them. And the few who successfully escaped will be so scared to go back. Even if they go back to their communities, they will have nothing left. Their entire communities would have been ravaged, everything burnt down, just like it is happening in Sudan right now. So you know there's a word for it. When people that are not indigenous to an area invade the area to forcefully displace the people, the world knows what they are doing. So let them stop the deception. Let them address the problem. Even if it is a community clash, it should not be happening at all. It's still a security challenge that must be dealt with. As a result of all these constant attacks, millions of Nigerians are living in IDP camps, despite the country not being at war. The government is not doing anything to resettle them back to their communities. They can't prevent the attacks. They can't resettle the people who ran away from attacks. It's a complete failure, and considering that Tinubu criticized Goodluck Jonathan for these kind of events in 2014, in one of his old tweets, he said, On matters of security, the buck stops at the president's table. Like in other countries, Jonathan is the chief security officer. On whose table is the buck stopping now?
I don't want to be political. I will ask you, where are the cows?
In this state is under assault. There is an attempt at ethnic cleansing in this state, and of course in all the riverine states of Nigeria. We must resist it. We must stop it. Every one of us must rise up. The armed forces are not neutral. They collude. They collude. They collude with the armed bandits that kill people, kill Nigerians. They facilitate their movements. They cover them. If you are depending on the armed forces to stop the killings, you will all die one by one.
This is true, and Danjuma, being a former chief of army staff, as an army veteran, he should know what is going on. The evidence is there that they collaborate with them. Look at this video. How in the world did this happen? Why are Nigerian soldiers in the midst of terrorists? It's like a bazaar. The bad guys are moving around freely. It even looks as if they are in charge, with the soldier on phone telling his colleagues on the highway to allow them a free passage. This is no way to fight insecurity. There are many reasons why the army and other security agencies don't want to fight these guys. The main one is religion, and the other might be business interests and solidarity. The heads of many security agencies in Nigeria are mostly dominated by people from the northern part of the country. As such, they are mostly of the same Muslim religion. On the business side, most of the cattle in the care of cattle headers are owned by military or paramilitary personnel. Even in some cases, civil servants commit to these kind of investments. They buy a calf, or as many as they can afford. They put them in the care of cattle headers, who will head them until they are mature enough to be sold for beef. So it's very understandable that if one makes an investment, he will try very hard to make sure that the investment doesn't fail. In this case, security agents who are not supposed to be involved in these kind of investments are the ones to be called and deployed to quell clashes between farmers and herders. It's no longer a clash because the so-called cattle herders are now seriously armed. Think of a militia or a small military unit. They usually invade in their hundreds. So while it's understandable that the military, who the cattle herders are practically working for, will refuse to intervene in a time they are needed most, it becomes morally reprehensible for them to protect their investment at the detriment of hundreds of casualties. When is this going to stop? Also, there are many reports that many of these communities have formed vigilante groups to secure their communities, only for the security agents to come and seize their weapons. So they've been intentionally left out to dry. Has this become state policy? Why can't Nigerians feel safe in their own country? The state can't guarantee their safety. They also can't allow them to defend themselves. What is going on here? If the government wants Nigerians to believe that there's no expansionist agenda in these Christian communities, then they must, as a matter of urgency, find the people committing these atrocities and bring them to justice. Cattle farming is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We are in the 21st century. There's no reason to continue herding cattle in this modern age. Besides, the cattle are exposed to too much suffering, which leaves them malnourished, unlike when they are raised in a ranch. The farmer can also produce milk and meat and earn more money in a ranch. And even if the government is not willing to help them to set up a ranch to raise their cattle, they should seek for a loan from a bank. It's business. After all, they don't give out the cattle for free to people.
We should abolish the transportation or the trekking of herdsmen from northern part of Nigeria to the middle belt and to the southern part of Nigeria. There should be a law that will ban, you see, otherwise we cannot control the conflict between herdsmen and the farmers. And we cannot control even the cattle rustling, which is affecting us greatly.
Doing the right thing isn't hard. The same way these people make investments in cattle is the same way farmers invest in crops and cultivation. After all this, they wait for the harvest, only for herders to lead their cows to eat all the crops.
They have destroyed everything. You see the maize. They messed everything up. What a wicked people.
How devastating. They do it because they know nothing will happen to them. After all, the cows belong to military men who are mostly of the same tribe with them, and they have their friends in government. They won't do anything. The people that are victims can't do anything. It's just heartbreaking. Nothing ever happens to them. No one has ever been brought to justice, and going by the attitude of the government, they don't see the poor people as victims. Otherwise, why are Nigerian flags not being flown at half-mast right now? Something must surely give. Thanks for watching.
When you have a situation where your own tribe is being accused of something, now you must be able to look into it and make it transparently clear that that accusation is unfounded, or if it's founded, you deal with it. There had been, herdsmen, farmers. Now, herdsmen are mainly Fulanis. Nothing has been done. Rather than doing something about it, what we are having is, okay, we will create colonies, cattle colony. Where will you create colony in Nigeria? Is it in my own part of the country that you will now make a colony? Who will give you land to create colony within its own state? So these are specific. You are asking for specific. I can go on and on. But there are many things that should not have been done that are being done, and many things that should have been done that are not being done, that will have helped in the area of management of diversity.